Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Maria and I'm with the marketing team here at MC+A. Today, we're happy to present a discussion between Michael Sismer, managing partner here at MC+A, and Brian Lawler, regional counsel with Legal Services of Northern California. Our agenda for today will cover everything from a little intro about LSNC, their work with MC+A. We'll cover everything about the solution and some of the benefits and the impact in their organization. Before we start, I do have a couple of announcements. This webinar will be recorded and included in our website very soon. Also, will be available via email. To ensure audio quality, we have everyone on listen-only mode. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit those in the webinar chat area, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. Hi, Michael. Hi, Brian. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning or good
afternoon. Hi, Maria.
First case, yeah.
Okay, so Brian, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Ellison See and what is it that you do?
Well, a thumbnail sketch of our organization is we're actually a pretty large nonprofit in California. We provide civil legal aid representation to low-income clients. We have about 120, 130 employees, half of whom are attorneys. There are also a complement of paralegals and support staff, that sort of thing. But about half of the staff is actually very involved in providing the direct assistance to the clients. We serve a really large geographic area. It's the upper 23 counties in California. We serve all the counties in Northern California outside of the Bay Area, which is a separate, there's a separate legal aid program over there. And in any given year, we do really a lot of cases. Most of them are fairly what we call brief service or counsel advice cases, but we serve in excess of 20,000 clients a year. So that puts a lot of demands on our case management system, which I'm going to talk about. By way of background, one of the things that we have relied upon, and this kind of fits into what the webinar topic is today, is that we were the first legal aid program in the United States to actually adopt the Google Apps platform. And even before it was called Google Apps, our organization had been using Gmail as our principal, not as a principal, actually as the dedicated email client. And we, as Google expanded the apps that were available that were cloud-based, we quickly picked up on those. We've relied on, there's a core set of apps which include Gmail, Google Calendar, and what used to be just Google Docs, but now is Google Drive. I think Google Drive came on board, I think about 2012, if I remember. I could have that wrong, but we've been using that for several years. And, what I'm going to be talking about a little bit later is that we did have, we're going to be talking about some integrations between our case management system and the Google Apps platform. We got special funding from the Legal Service Corporation, which is a national corporation that was created by the U.S. Congress. It's our primary funding source. They have a kind of a dedicated component that works on technology development for legal aid programs like mine. And we received what's called a TIG grant, Technology Innovation Grant, to underwrite the development of the 3 Google Apps integrations that are going to be part of the discussion today. And does that give you a good idea where we are?
Yeah, that sounds great. Now, moving on to MC+A. Michael, please give everyone an introduction about MC+A, who we are, how we help companies like LSNC.
All right, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Sismer. I'm the managing director of MC+A. I founded the company. We work a lot with doing systems integration, which really means making different software and computer systems talk to each other in a meaningful way or for a specific purpose. We got connected with Brian's group a few years ago to work on a Google Search Appliance project, and we've been also working on this integration piece. So we provide the technical implementation capabilities to complete Brian's visions.
Yeah, actually, we've worked with you guys, Mike, since I think about, if I recall, It was like late
8 years.
7. Yeah, it's been quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 years. And we have a special place in our heart for the legal aid community. We try not to be robber baron capitalists, and one of the things that we focus on is trying to help the outreach and work that your organizations try to do, because for what's simple for us, it tends to be a lot more complicated to those type of organizations.
Right. Okay. So thank you guys for those introductions. Let's move on. So Brian, as you were telling me, and Michael, basically, you had at Ellison See, you were using Pika, and you also had Gmail, but they were working separately. So the problem was the systems, as Michael said, they were not talking to each other. So how did you actually solve this? That's where we want to get, and how did Michael and MC+A help in this integration? So Brian,
Well,
can you give us?
Sure. This is like kind of the meat of what I'm kind of interested in talking about today, to give some folks a feel for this. There's a context for why we approached MC+A about this particular project. We did, as Michael was alluding to, we do have a history with them as Google developers. We've had a couple other projects that they've been very helpful with us on. In this case, there was sort of a practical problem that we were very aware of, and also there was some attorney demand within our organization about solving a kind of a basic problem, which was our staff had become very accustomed to seeing how web tools, even the Google apps, how well they were integrated, one thing working with another. But there was a real disconnect in a practical sense between our case management system, which is called Pika. It's a custom, we've been using it for about 10 years, but it's a custom designed or custom built PHP-based content or case management system. It's been designed for use by legal aid programs like ours. It's a niche product, but it's a very good product. The problem was that there are things that we do every day as attorneys or paralegals where we're doing something in the case management system and want some of that information or that content to make some kind of connection to the Google apps we use. And the core things are Gmail. Everybody uses Gmail. And I can tell you from our experience, all the new attorneys coming into our organization right out of law school kind of hit the deck running. They all the schools that we're hiring from have been using Google Apps for a long time, and they're very accustomed to using Gmail, Google Calendar, and now Google Drive, which is a more recent platform, but it's a very good platform. And but there was this disconnect. We couldn't, staff would be, they were trying to find some way to make it easier for them to do certain basic things. And a real concrete example is with Gmail. It's an everyday occurrence where the staff, you get emails, you want to make a copy of that and put it into the case record. And what they had to do was go through a really kind of cumbersome process of copying and pasting, opening up the case record, open up the case management system, locate the case record, and then find the page that has the case notes and then paste it in. And the same thing with that moving, there might be a file attachment that was part of a Gmail message, and they had to go through all these hoops to get into the case management system. And so we got there was actually a lot of, even before I talked to Michael about this, there was a lot of, I was getting, pleas from the staff, like, is there some way we can make this easier? And kind of similar with the Google Calendar, we have a system that we use. We're actually required to enter tickler calendar items into the case management system. It's an ethical obligation, it's a professional obligation. We have to be very attuned to time-sensitive events. And so the staff is very accustomed, they absolutely understand the inner tickler items for certain kinds of deadlines. It might be a statute of limitations, there might be a date by which something has to be filed, a time for a hearing, a time for completing discovery. You might be scheduling something that's a team meeting in a case. All those sort of things have to go into the tickler. But the fact is that Google Calendar is where people really want to see this stuff. So we wanted to make a connection between the case management system and the Google Calendar application that's part of the Google Apps platform. And then with Google Drive, we really wanted something more robust built into the case management system. Pika case management system, which is very good and has a very serviceable mechanism, file manager, where you can put files in. But the fact is that the Google Drive interface and a lot of the functionality is superior to what we had in the case management system. So, I approached Michael and said, is there a way we can get some of that Google Drive functionality just integrated into the case management system? And so we wanted to make that process easier for people to accomplish some fairly routine tasks. And so that's what that was all about. And that's kind of a description of kind of the problem and the solution. With the project phases, Michael, is that something you wanted to cover? Did you want me to talk about that?
We talked about it. There's a slide in a couple spots ahead for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry, right here. Yeah. So Brian and I met. We looked at what were those touch points and we didn't want to boil the ocean or make a very complicated multi-year deployment. We broke this down into really just like the product that we were going to work on with Google. So we started out by developing the Gmail integration. So how would advocates like the integration, the flow to be? We drew that up, and then there's not really a way to extend Gmail directly, so you have to develop what's called a browser extension. And the browser extension gets installed, and when it detects that you're in Gmail, it will start to interact with the page and providing some of these actions. So we went and built that, and then we drove into the Google Drive piece. And today, we continue to support the project from an expansion standpoint, feature standpoint. We've even taken this a bit further, where we'll be releasing. There's a lot of NGOs who use Salesforce for their intake and case management workflows, and so we're going to be releasing a similar set of extensions for Gmail for those types of organizations, which you could buy commercially. They are quite expensive with just another cost, and we leverage a lot of the existing technology here to put that together.
The one thing I would add, Mike, there was also another project phase that had to do with getting the connection between the calendar function in our case management system to send Gmail notifications about calendar items, and that was another piece of it. So there were 3 integrations that we worked with you on, and it was a partnership. MC+A was the lead developer, but the developer of the Pika case management system was also part of the development team.
Great. Thank you. So moving on, Brian, you mentioned something at the beginning about how people were already related with Gmail and the applications. So I want to know, I'm curious, how is the adoption process once that you have all these people already familiar with the system? How did you handle it? How did you train them, or how was the process?
Well, let me run through a couple things, and I'm not meaning to get the cart ahead of the horse, but I think it'll probably be helpful to kind of talk about how simple the deployment was on this particular project. I've got a couple slides coming up that'll give you some visual sense of what the integrations look like. But adoption of this has been very easy. It's really been pretty much pain-free. I am hard-pressed to come up with even an anecdote of any kind of real problem. And part of it has to do with what the goals of the project were and how well the integrations were done. Our staff, part of the real advantage on this is our staff across the board is very familiar with the Google Apps platform. We've been using it for years. And as I mentioned, when we have new people coming in, these hot shots coming out of law school, these youngins, so to speak, they just, they absolutely hit the deck running. They're just great. They're very accustomed to using this. They've done it in school, in law school, and so on. So, they know what these things are, and they know what the feature sets are generally. What we did was did a lot of sort of groundwork to make the transition to the integrations as easy as possible. And actually, I did a set of videos that did a video that was actually videos that were taken in one of our test bed sites where we're doing beta testing to show people, so people knew that the thing was coming. It was like a movie preview, so to speak. And we distributed those over a set period of time. We didn't like dump 3 videos all at once. We kind of did them in steps, so people were motivated to actually watch them. They were pretty short. I think, Mike, you actually have those videos available somewhere as part of an MC+A YouTube channel somewhere. And,
right, they're in our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and you can contact them about that. They're also posted at a Google Plus project site that we have. But basically the video showed what the integrations do. And so for folks who are listening in on this webinar, maybe we didn't want to really run those videos, but we wanted to talk about these integrations. But you can see what we did with them more specifically. And so we did these videos, and then we also on the slide it says staff meetings. There were sort of select staff. I demonstrated. The way we're organized is we have these 8 offices. All of them have office managers, and they're sort of like our first line of defense on IT stuff. Very savvy people. They know how to kind of handle our infrastructure locally, and they're responsible actually to bring people up in their office up to speed on training on applications, and if people are having problems. They're kind of like the go-to first person in the organization. We had a meeting with them, and we went through the integrations, and we demonstrated them, and we showed them the videos. And they, in turn, when they had their regular staff meetings, each of the offices have a staff meeting every week, and they ran the videos, and they showed people, what they are and how they work. And so that was it. It's an absolute true story that we just, no one has contacted IT support or the office manager saying, I don't understand how to use Google Calendar. What's going on? What's going on with the Google Drive thing? The design of the integrations was to make them as transparent as possible. And this is actually, Maria, this might be a good time to slip to the first slide that shows the interface, which is right after the adoption thing. And for example, with the calendar integration, again, what we were trying to accomplish was this: that in the case management system, we have a tickler system. We're required to have it. We do it. The staff is very responsible about it. We wanted to get those tickler calendar items in our case management system over to people's individual personal Google calendars, the ones in our domain using Google Apps. And this is the screen that's shown right now is just shows how simple it was. Is that once people started, and once the calendar integration was in place, people would add a tickler item. Next thing they know, every time they entered a tickler item, a Gmail notification would go to to each of the people who are associated with the case, and that's built into the case management system. There might be one. Typically, there's 1 or 2 people. Sometimes on bigger cases, there's 1, 2, 3, or 4. I shouldn't say 1 or 2. On a bigger case, there's likely to be 3 or 4 advocates working on kind of major impact litigation when we do. Well, tickler goes in. Whoever it enters it, it goes to the attorneys on the case, and they get, it's a simple message, alerting them in Gmail that a tickler item has been added to the case, and then they have an option. It's surrounded by a red box here. They click on that to add it to their calendar. That's all they have to do. It's real simple. If they don't, not everybody in a case may feel the need or want to add it to their personal Gmail calendar, but we have a protocol that requires certain people on the case to actually do it. So that's how that worked. It just was totally transparent to people. They didn't have to do anything differently. All they had to do is enter a tickler like they've always done, and then all they had to do was open a Gmail message like they've always done. So it was pretty painless.
Yeah, and Brian, that was our intention, right? We knew the advocates, we knew the end users, and for this to be adopted, it couldn't interfere with the workflow, and there's legal requirements about that workflow.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. It's something we have to do, and this made it easier. Maria, on the next slide, I want to show people, talk a little bit about the Gmail integration. And this screenshot is actually a screenshot from the Google Web Store. And this is like a private, Michael, I don't actually know how this works, but I think it's like you have to have a link to it to find it. Is that correct? Or
the Chrome extension?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we created the package, and we published the package up to the Chrome store. Yeah. And so there's a process by which you install any of these type of add-ons. So it flows right through that.
Okay. To use the Gmail integration, the Gmail integration was intended to provide a simplified way so that the staff could copy the contents of a Gmail message over directly to the case record. It's something that we do routinely every day. I can tell you as a supervisor or manager, I mean, I look at other people's case records, and in this day and age, it's very common, take stuff straight out of an email message and put it into the documentation of some kind on a case record. It's real critical. Gmail, email, Gmail, whatever you're using, it's a primary way in which people are communicating with it, internally about cases, externally with third parties, opposing counsel, the courthouse. We do a lot of work with and against various kinds of government agencies, and there's a lot of communication that goes on with email. It's kind of a basic observation. For this to work, and I'm going to describe it in just a minute, but it only works if you install the extension, the package that Michael described, the MC+A build. And what we do, just as a practical matter, so people know how we phase this in, is that in terms of all everybody in the how do I say this? We have protocols or standards for a desktop configuration or organization. Those now include installing this Chrome extension on all the desktops. It's there now, and the office managers are basically the persons who kind of hand curated that. They made sure we sent out a message to all the staff. Most of them knew how to do this, but there were some folks who had never installed a Chrome extension, and so the office managers actually thoroughly reviewed. They went around with everybody in each of the offices and made sure this got installed. When we do a new desktop, we just mirror a drive. We have a standard mirror of a standard hard drive installation for our offices. Now that includes that. I will, as an aside to this, one of the effects of this integration is that it really tipped the scale in terms of using the Chrome browser. Before we started the integration project, we support two browsers in the organization historically. The Chrome browser, which we promote, and is the default browser that we've set up for a long time. We also support Firefox because a lot of staff have been using that. We want to make sure we want people to do their work. We're not interested in having pissing matches about browsers. But in doing a survey on this project, the people, you have to use Chrome in order to use this particular extension. And the last survey we did about this integration shows that 100% of the attorneys are using Chrome now. And it used to be, 55 or 60%. So it's had that real direct impact. This slide was just intended, I threw this in here because I wanted to show actually how easy it is to configure it. When you install the extension, you have to put in a URL for the case management system, the Pika case management system. And that's so that the two can talk. In other words, the extension needs to know where the hell is the case management system. And then you put in your login for the case management system and your password. And then there's an option. You can do 1, 2, or 3 different kinds of things that get copied over. But and we try to keep it simple. you can copy over, and the way I have mine set up is that it copies the header, the subject line, and the body of the email message. But you can add or remove these depending on what your preference is. But a header is kind of it's like the stuff that's at the top of the email message. And it's like the thing that makes it look like an email message. You know who it's from, who it's to, the date, and that kind of stuff. The subject line is just the subject line in the email message. The body is the body of the email message itself. Maria, could you push to the next slide? And this actually shows this is actually a Gmail message. This is a test message, it's not a real one. The message was sent by Clarence Darrow, and that's the make-believe email account we use for testing things here at LSNC. I wish we had Clarence Darrow on staff, but we don't. But we got some people pretty good. But this is kind of it was an example message. And you actually use the Gmail extension. You open up the Gmail message, and at the top, there's a red button. You can see this in this slide, at the very top. You click on that, and it brings you up to the next screen. It brings up a dialog box. And this is, I'm not showing all the dialogues. There's a bunch of various options. But basically, it's just a very clear message to our users, what this extension will do. You can search for the case. You have to identify the case in order to copy it over properly. You can choose, there's a checkbox at the bottom. The default is to copy the entire message or thread or conversation. And then if there's file attachments, and you can uncheck that if you just want to copy over the individual message. And then below that, you can select to add attachments. For example, if somebody sends you an email message that has 3 file attachments, when you use this extension and you click on it and you make your selection, you'll see the names of the 3 file attachments, and you can check, whichever file or files you want to copy over. And when you actually hit the red button in the lower right-hand side, it'll actually copy over not just the Gmail message, but it'll actually take those files and automatically put them into the Google Drive integration, which I'm going to illustrate in just a second. So that's how that works. And this is just an example. This is actually the prior, I showed you that example of the Gmail message with Clarence Darrow on it. This is exactly the same message and how it appears in the case record in our test installation. Part of the tweaking as we did the process was to kind of clean up the display, make sure the line breaks and everything are working correctly, and the content displays the way you would want it. It's very useful. And this is the last integration. This is, I got to tell you, everybody likes all this stuff. The feedback's been very, very positive. But I'll tell you, this Google Drive integration has really been a big hit. This is actually an example of our current interface. We've made some changes recently, but the way, the whole point of the thing was to give staff the kind of user, some of the, it doesn't have all the functionality of Google Drive, the full-on Google Drive app, but it's got a lot. So we created, the integration was done in a way so that within the case record, this is actually what our user interface looks like. You can click on the Drive tab, which is illustrated here, and then there's a bunch of files. And these were test files, and you can see these were done a few weeks ago when we were finalizing it. Aaron Worley is actually the Pika developer, and the reason we were doing this a couple weeks ago is we have just added drag and drop or multiple file uploads. That's what the big kind of blue button is. It's a drag and drop area. Works very smoothly, and staff are really loving that. That was one of the people were very happy when we did the Google Drive integration initially. Very happy with it, but they said, okay, I want to, we got to have multiple file uploads, and so that particular kind of add-on or addition to the integration was just completed a couple weeks ago. The way the interface works is that, like in Google Drive, if you click on a file, it opens it up the same way it occurred. The way it opens up, it's integrated with the Google Drive document viewer. I don't know if I'm using the right label for it, but if you have a PDF file or an image file and so on, that's not a native Google Docs, Google will automatically open that file up into its document viewer. It's been very popular here because you can often tell what a file is if it's been named properly, but everybody who works here is a human being, and sometimes we don't name the files in a way that is intuitive. You name it, and 3 weeks later or 6 months later, you don't even know what the file is about. It's great. You're in Google Drive. You're in the case management system. You go to the Drive tab. You click on the file. The document viewer comes up, and you can see immediately what it is. And then if that's the file you want, you can, from the document viewer, for those who are familiar with Google Drive, you can print the file, you can scroll through it, you can do a share, you can rename the file, all those kinds of things. It's really great, and it's been very handy. To give you just one example, I have stuff in my in case records. I can go to a case record, and somebody will actually ask me. I'm a senior litigator here, and somebody will ask for a certain kind of type of document. It's a very common kind of request, and I'll remember. Oh yeah, I had something in the Smith case. I go into, but I don't know. I just know that I had that document. I can go into that case record, go to the Drive tab, find what I think is the file. I'll click on it to confirm that it's the file that I was looking for, and then I can actually directly share it within that the Google Drive document viewer thingy, which I think people have used. If you've used Google Drive, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I recommend Google Drive, but I'm assuming most of the people on this call are pretty much familiar with that. I think that's it, Maria, for me on this stuff.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Well, it sounds like it's been a great implementation for your team. It does sound really easy to use. I'm glad to hear that. From another conversation, I remember you mentioned something about a story, like people thought that Google was making all of these integrations happen. So can you share a little bit about that story and some of the benefits that you noticed?
Absolutely. I think the story you're talking about is people's reaction to the calendar integration when we first did it. We've been using the integrations actually since April of last year. Everything's been very stable. There were some minor, largely cosmetic things that the basic functionality was working okay. There were a couple things we had to tweak to make them work better, I guess is a fair way to say it. Both MC+A and Pika Software were very helpful, and we got all that stuff worked out. The calendar thing was, when we first did this last year, I did a quick survey to see what people's reactions were. What was their experience? Was it working for you? Those kinds of things. And one of the things that was odd, it was all thumbs up from everybody. The feedback was very positive, but with one exception on the calendar thing, people, I posed a question, and the question was something like, and actually it wasn't negative, it was just like, are you aware of the Google Calendar integration and what it does? That was the question. And there were a lot of people who said no. And so I dug deeper. In other words, I did follow up. I talked to people, and again, this is sort of anecdotal. I talked to a couple people who answered no. And they said, well, you talked about the Google Calendar integration, but I thought, I get these Gmail messages, but they thought it was just sort of like a update to the Google Apps interface. They didn't make the jump like, yeah, this is great, this is handy, I'm using it, but they just thought it was like something that Google came up with. There's only partial truth to that. We used Google APIs, and Mike can answer those questions. I can't answer that. But people thought it was just something that Google had. As you know, if you use a Google Apps platform, and it's both a blessing and a curse. I mean, Google's constantly, I'm very pleased that they constantly, are making improvements and changing, and, they've really improved the user interface, but they changed stuff a lot, and they just thought this was a change. Maria, you had asked me when we were prepping for this, you asked about sort of what difference did this stuff make? And can I describe sort of try to give people sort of a practical sense of like why this is actually beneficial to our users? I mean, it's cool, but like, what difference does it make? Which is a fair question. But to give you some scale on this, with the calendar integration, which I was just talking about, you put in a tickler item, and it shows up in your Google Calendar. Well, in any given month, there's like over 900 tickler items that are entered in the case management system. It's a lot. We have, there's about 60 or 70 people who are
excuse me, Brian. We did have a question about what a tickler is. Since you're on the topic, maybe you can just repeat that from an overview perspective.
Sure. It's a term of art. As lawyers, as people who are representing clients, we have an ethical obligation, a professional obligation, to have a actual system for calendaring items, events that are mission critical to the case. And just to give a concrete example, I may have, I have a trial date coming up, and it's a time-sensitive event. I'm ethically required to maintain a calendar for tracking those kinds of events, so I don't forget to go to the trial, or prepare, get something, appear at a hearing. And lawyers call those ticklers. It's a calendaring system. They tickle things. So they have a method where they can review those kinds of time-sensitive events for a case to make sure they know what's happening, when it's happening, and they don't miss it. Because if you miss if I didn't show up for a trial that was scheduled because I forgot to put it in the calendar, I could be sued for malpractice. So does that make sense, Michael?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Some people aren't.
It is a term of art. I mean, I'm kind of talking as a lawyer, and we call them ticklers. But just think of it as a calendar event. But to make this concrete in terms of what's happening in the real world here, in a given month, there are in the case management system, there are about 900 tickler events entered into the case management system. And what that means is with this integration, there are 900 Gmail notifications that go to the advocates within our organization, the attorneys and paralegals who enter this information. That's like 900 emails, and it's efficient for a couple of reasons. One, the tickler items entered, they get the Gmail notification, and they are able to then easily, by clicking on the button I illustrated earlier, add to calendar. It goes into their personal Gmail thing. But it's even better than that in this sense, that the way this has been set up or integrated on those there's a multiplier effect, which is 900 those 900 calendar events or tickler events I call them. Those are entered. A Gmail message goes not just to one person; it goes to every attorney or paralegal who's working on a particular case. And so, boom, it's not just without doing anything further, multiple people are notified about it. And then on top of that, the integration also sends a Gmail notification of the calendar event to a dedicated office tickler calendar. So each of the offices have a calendar for tracking all the events, and it automatically goes there. So it's like, with one entry, there's these multiple things, and so in our case, you're talking, it's not quite 10,000, but it's close to 10,000 calendar events are triggered by this whole mechanism.
Okay, cool. We had another question just about, would this work with other Pika systems? And the answer is yes. We'll include out those requirements, but and if you've done customizations to your Pika system, our code is on GitHub, and you could, there's a process by which you could make a copy of it and stay up to date with our changes, but then maintain your own. And a technologist would probably be needed to help you with that. But in general, this is supposed to work with it out of the box. There's just a few APIs that weren't initially, and that Aaron was developing for us that are required to be installed.
About to say that we're running out of time. I wanted to remind everyone that if you have more questions, please, now that we're answering these final questions and final comments, so go ahead and submit those in the chat area while Brian finishes what he was about to say.
Mike's last comment actually highlights something that was great about working on this project. It's all the code for our particular project, the integration with Pika, and the code that MC+A developed, and in working with the Pika software. It's all open source. It is a GitHub. it's all built around the Pika case management system, which is a specific case management system that's built on that people run on a LAMP stack. But the concepts, I think what Michael wanted to, it kind of asked me to convey is give people a sense of what you can do with integration in working with the case management system. That there's, the Google APIs are very powerful, and there's a lot you can do to simplify people's work doing these kinds of things. Is that a fair way to say it, Mike? I don't know if
Yeah, I think so. I think for us at MC+A, we saw very many similarities into the workflows, and we're somewhat jealous that we didn't have the same type of tool, because we have a CRM system that we are tracking our own support tickets and opportunities and sharing knowledge in there. But we work all of our collaboration, all of our communications done in Google Apps. So you have this kind of these silos, and that's one of the reasons why we went and did the Salesforce one. But the true part, when you start seeing yourself doing a task over and over and not enjoying it, it's always a good opportunity to look at potentially something that could be automated.
Okay.
Right, and I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, I was about to say, do you have any more questions you want to answer, or Brian, any final comments?
No, I'm good.
Great. Well, thank you both so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Remember that this webinar will be available in our website very soon and also sent to your emails. If you want to learn more about this integration in particular, remember Brian mentioned we have some demos in our YouTube channel. Here are all our social media networks. There you go. We also encourage you to visit our website, MC+A.com, and learn about these and other customized solutions for your business. You can contact us through the website, via social media, or you can send us an email to marketing@mc+a.com with any questions, and we'll be very happy to assist you in finding the right implementation. We really appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.